everybody. So happy to have you with me. It's the Awesome Vegans interview series right here on WCGO. Now, you know, if you can't belly up to your dial at 95.9 FM and 1590 AM, you can always go to Alexa. Say, hey, Alexa, play me WCGO. And of course, there's always WCGOradio.com. And if you would like a plant-based radio show at your father's house or your, in Colorado or your mother's place in New York, just let them know that they can pick up the Elysabeth Alfano show on the Smart Talk Radio Network. Contact me at Elysabeth Alfano, all the socials, you've got them, and they can find out how they can have the first plant-based radio show in the nation in their hometown. Okay, so if you are with me every week, then you know I like to start the show out with some news. And it's big news for plant-based world this week. The Plant-Based Food Association, and if you follow my other podcast, the Plant-Based Business Hour on iTunes, you know that I just recently interviewed the founder and executive director, Michelle Simon. They've been working on a research project where they coupled with Kroger, the grocery store, and they asked Kroger to make a 3-foot space for plant-based meats right next to the meats in that aisle to see what would happen. And here are some of the results. Putting on my sexy librarian glasses for you out there watching on Facebook. Okay, so sales were up 23% for plant-based foods when they were accessible to people, when they could find them where they're expecting to find meat. And then in the Midwest, I think this is so fun since WCGO Radio is right here in Chicago. In the Midwest, plant-based sales were up 32%, showing that there is this demand. There are so many flexitarians out there. There is this demand that when they can actually find the product, they not only buy it, but they come back for repeat purchases at 34%. So I thought it was really interesting news, and I think very interesting for grocery stores, which are learning that, they're going to make 32 to 34%, 23 to 34% more money if they give plant-based options some room and some shelf space. So I think that has to be music to their ears. And I think very much for the consumer, which is trying to find these alternative products, the demand is clearly there. And so now I think grocery stores are going to be paying attention to these numbers. So very exciting. Roger Federer, we know him as the champion of tennis. He's got a vegan shoe out, which I think is so cool. He says that he's interested in doing a vegan tennis shoe for sustainability reasons. I'll take it. That's wonderful. So that's so very cool. And then, of course, I have my August 8th Jumpstart Your Plant-Based Life class. Anyone can sign up. It's online. You can do it from anywhere around the country. It's August 8th, and you can get that link at elizabethalfano.com/recipes. What I'll do is I will walk you through all the steps, what to get rid of in your kitchen, what to put in your kitchen, the shopping list you really want, the recipes that are easy to make, the menu plan that we do specifically for you, and some tips and tricks. If you're going to go out to restaurants, how do you keep that plant-based regime in control? So very, very good, fun class, about 3 hours on August 8th. I hope that you will sign up. Okay, so one of the things that I'll probably go over as well in my class, I am a licensed Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And so much of what we talk about in our instruction series is managing diabetes. So really what I want to do today is bring on my experts, Robby Barbaro and Cyrus Khambatta, joining us from Costa Rica. Hiya, Cyrus.
How you doing? Good to see you today, Elizabeth.
Yes, so happy that you guys are here. Hey, Robby, thanks for being here. Okay, so take us back to the basics, I'll say. Well, first, let me give some stats. 11% of the U.S. has diabetes. 95% of that is type 2 diabetes. And maybe you could help us understand what is type 1 diabetes, what is type 2 diabetes, and from your book, Mastering Diabetes, I learned that there's something called 1.5 diabetes, and I didn't even know that before.
Right, which most people don't know anything about. Okay, so over the course of time, diabetes has become a lot more complicated. It used to literally just be type 1 and type 2, that was it. Or type 1, pre-diabetes, and type 2 diabetes, but it's gotten more complex. So in truth, there's type 1, type 1.5, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. So there's 5 types of diabetes, and now there's even a type 3 diabetes, which is basically Alzheimer's disease or insulin resistance of your brain, right? Oh. So it's continuing to become more nuanced. And what's important here is that the way to distinguish between the different types of diabetes is mainly to distinguish between what is autoimmune and what is not. Okay.
Okay.
So type 1 and type 1.5 diabetes are autoimmune conditions. Robbie has type 1 diabetes. I have type 1 diabetes. And people living with type 1.5 also are experiencing an autoimmune condition. What an autoimmune condition is when your own immune system has sort of been coerced or hijacked into believing that the beta cells inside of your pancreas, which are responsible for making insulin, that those beta cells are dangerous. And so as a result of that, your own immune system manufactures these things called antibodies, and these antibodies go and they destroy the insulin producing cells in your pancreas. And as a result of that, you go from secreting a normal amount of insulin to secreting a very small amount of insulin. And when you do that, you have to then inject insulin from the outside world using a pen, using a syringe, using an insulin pump in order to make up for the insulin that you're no longer manufacturing. Okay? So type 1 generally affects younger individuals underneath the age of 30. And it's a pretty fast progressing condition that can, become pretty severe over the course of 12 to 18 months.
And something you're born with, right? It's something that you genetically are predisposed to. Is that accurate?
So yes and no. Historically speaking, people diagnosed with type 1 diabetes were considered young. So that's why it's been called juvenile onset. Literally, you can get it at birth. You can get it at 2 years old, at 8 years old, at 6 years old, you name it. I don't know if you can hear this thunderstorm.
It's thundering, everyone.
But over the course of time, there has been a 23% increase in the number of people diagnosed with type 1 diabetes over the last decade, and researchers are befuddled. They have no idea why. If you ask me, I think it has something very strong to do. There's a very strong connection with the food system, the quality of the food that we're eating, and as a result of that, diabetes rates have gone up. Now, type 1 diabetes can also affect older individuals at the age of 20, 25, closer to the age of 30. I got it when I was 22. Robbie got it when he was 12, if I'm not mistaken, right, Robbie?
Yes.
Yep. So technically speaking, Robbie wasn't an adolescent, or he wasn't a juvenile, right? And I was definitely like an adult at that point. Now, type 1.5 diabetes affects people over the age of 30, and it's the same autoimmune reaction, except it's slower progressing, and it's adult onset. And so as a result of that, people with type 1.5 diabetes often get misdiagnosed as having type 2 diabetes. And doctors try and treat them with metformin or glipizide or some kind of diabetes medication that they would give to their patients with type 2 that generally works. But in these type 1.5s, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Their blood glucose is still quite high. And as a result of that, when you actually go and figure it out and they're living with an autoimmune version and they're diagnosed over the age of 30, then that means that they have type 1.5 diabetes.
Okay, so there's so much to unpack here. It's type 1 diabetes is not the predominant type of diabetes. Is that correct? It's the smaller group of diabetes, and it's really type 2 diabetes that is, I'll say, a chronic disease in America. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so we're going to group two different types of diabetes together. You have pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, which we're going to group together, and we're going to call those like the lifestyle versions of diabetes that are lifestyle-related chronic diseases. So the way that this situation unfolds is that before you become pre-diabetic, you develop a condition known as insulin resistance. So insulin resistance is the first domino. When insulin resistance persists in your body, develops in your body and persists over the course of time, it can turn into pre-diabetes where your blood glucose gets slightly elevated. And then over the course of time, if you don't correct it, pre-diabetes can turn into type 2 diabetes. And at that point, you are now living with a, the true classification of type 2 diabetes. But the trick, and here's the beauty of this, is that most medical professionals and most people living with type 2 diabetes don't believe that type 2 diabetes is reversible. And most people don't believe that pre-diabetes is reversible. They think that, oh, I got it because my dad had it. I got it because my grandmother had it, right? And so they think that this is a genetic predisposition, and just because they have some kind of genetic material, some DNA through birth, that it's their destiny, it's their fate, and there's nothing I can do about it.
And that it's a life of insulin management with pens, et cetera.
Exactly right. But the truth is that you can absolutely reverse. You can go from type 2 back to prediabetes. You can go from prediabetes back to insulin resistant. You can go from insulin resistant back to non-diabetic, completely healthy. So you can always move in the opposite direction. And I say always, in truth, you can do that in like 90% of all situations. There are some cases where people living with type 2 diabetes have suffered enough damage to their pancreas and the beta cells that they can no longer become undiabetic. But that's a very small proportion of all people with type 2.
Okay, so what you are saying here is for type 2, at least, it is reversible through lifestyle changes, correct?
Yeah, in the majority of all cases, the answer is absolutely you can reverse type 2 diabetes.
But this is not the case for type 1. And we're going to get into, after the break, everybody, we will get into how do you reverse it. But I just want to put the foundation here first. It is not reversible for type 1, but it is manageable. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. So you cannot reverse type 1 diabetes. You cannot reverse type 1.5 diabetes.
Okay.
However,
that 1.5 keeps sneaking in.
Using the system that we've developed, which is the Mastering Diabetes method, which we wrote about in the Mastering Diabetes book, we give you an instruction manual for how not to reverse type 1 and 1.5 because it's not possible, but how to change your diet and transition to a plant-focused diet so that you can get better blood glucose control, make your life one heck of a lot simpler, and dramatically improve your quality of life. Right? So it's not about reversing in those conditions. It's about controlling with precision and dropping your chronic disease risk. And when you do that, life is fantastic.
Yeah, so this is groundbreaking. And this is why your book, Mastering Diabetes, is a New York Times bestseller, and why your website, masteringdiabetes.com, is really getting so much traffic. We're going to be right back after the break. So fascinating. Thank you. Everybody, welcome to Jane Unchained. We're doing a little radio today. When I start at the next segment, we're going to hear from Robby too, of course. It's so cute there being silent, but he's coming up. Don't worry. I'll also, oh my gosh, I'll also read your resumes. What's wrong with me? So many buttons going on. Here we go. Back to radio. Hey, everybody. Thanks for sticking with me. It's Elysabeth Alfano, the Elysabeth Alfano Show on WCGO. I have with me Cyrus Khambatta and Robby Barbaro. They both have type 1 diabetes, and they've written the New York Times best-selling book, Mastering Diabetes. You can learn all about it at their website as well, masteringdiabetes.com. But they really have the plan for managing type 1, so you don't have to live a life with EpiPens and severe discomfort, and of reversing type 2 diabetes, which is so gosh darn exciting and hopeful. But before we get into all the tips, which you're going to do, and all the ways you can reverse it, let's go over some of what you say doctors don't understand about diabetes, and how some people maybe have been getting misinformation from their doctors, which is so upsetting.
Well,
absolutely.
The biggest misinformation in the world of diabetes health is that you should avoid carbohydrate-rich foods because they will spike your blood glucose levels, they will spike your insulin levels, and your diabetes will get worse. And we wrote about this in detail in our book, getting into the science.
We did.
But
Page 44.
There you go. This is a fundamental mistake, because that is true if you are living in an insulin-resistant state. So the reason diabetes is so confusing is because it's one of the few conditions you can self-diagnose on a meal-by-meal basis. People living with diabetes have access to a blood glucose meter. They can eat a meal. They can test their blood and say, okay, wait a minute. Did these foods raise my blood glucose? Did they keep it steady? What's going on here? Whereas many other chronic conditions, you can't self-monitor on a meal-by-meal basis. Right. And so people with diabetes, they will try eating a higher carbohydrate-rich meal. They'll eat some bananas, they'll eat some quinoa, some potatoes in any given meal. They'll test themselves, and 2 hours later, their blood glucose is elevated. It's supposed to be somewhere between 80 and 130 after a meal, and they'll see it's 200, it's 250. And they say, look, I eat by my meter. My meter says that these foods make my blood glucose worse, therefore I am not going to eat them. But they're missing the understanding that the reason their body couldn't metabolize the glucose in those foods is because of the food they ate prior, that they have eaten themselves into a state of insulin resistance. And if they chose to eat themselves out of that state, they could easily metabolize delicious carbohydrate-rich foods.
Okay, so this is where it gets exciting, people. You can eat your way. This is the benefit of a plant-based diet. All we're telling you to do is eat. Like, what could be better? I mean, I'm a Sicilian. Like, who doesn't want to eat? All we're doing is telling you to eat. So this is what's so great about this. You can eat your way out of an insulin resistant state. Let's go back to the basics. One of you gorgeous men, could you please explain to me what is insulin resistance?
Okay, here we go. I'm going to tell you the story of insulin resistance because this is very highly misunderstood, and it's very controversial, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. So, insulin resistance is a condition that is caused by the consumption of excess dietary fat, not excess dietary sugar. Okay, so that's the first thing. I will say that again.
Can't wait to get into it.
Is a condition that is caused by the consumption of excess dietary fat, and it results from the storage of excess dietary fat in tissues that are not designed to store large quantities of fat. Okay. There's only one tissue in your body which is actually mechanically and enzymatically designed to store large quantities of fat, and that tissue is called fat or adipose tissue. Okay, so the adipose tissue is designed, it's elastic by nature, and what that means is that when there's a large quantity of dietary fat in your diet, the dietary fat can be directed towards the adipose tissue. The adipose tissue cells can become larger, they can store more fat per cell, and they can also grow more cells. And as a result of that, you can actually expand the adipose tissue, which is technically speaking a safe place to keep dietary fat. Adipose tissue holds on to that fat for long periods of time, and then it can break that fat down and it can get rid of that fat and it can donate it to other tissues when the time is right. Okay, so it's a perfectly designed system. But here's the problem. The average American is consuming a diet that's about 40% calories from fat. And when you start to eat a low carbohydrate diet or a ketogenic diet, then that number increases to between 70 and 80% of total calories as fat. And especially when the dietary fat that you're consuming is saturated in nature, that comes from mainly animal products, but also comes from things like coconuts and oil as well. Okay. What happens is that the fat that comes into your mouth goes into your digestive system. It ends up in these particles known as chylomicron particles. Chylomicrons are little transport vesicles that circulate in your blood, and their job is to donate fatty acids to tissues all around your body. So they go to the adipose tissue, which is where they're designed to go. But in addition to that, there's a spillover because your adipose tissue can't take up all of the fat that you eat. And as a result of that, some of that fat ends up going inside of your liver and some of it goes inside of your muscle. Now, over the course of time, as you continue to eat a high fat diet, more fat gets stored in your liver and your muscle and in your liver and in your muscle and in your liver and in your muscle. And this happens over and over and over again. And at a certain point, your liver and muscle basically say, whoa, 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 whoa. There's too much fat inside of here. We're not designed to take up this much dietary fat. So as a result of that, they go into a self-protective mode to limit more energy from coming in the cells. And the way that they do that is they basically say, hey, listen, we can't block these fatty acids because we don't have a very good mechanism to do that. But you know what we can block? We can block insulin. Yeah. And we're going to block insulin because insulin is a master hormone, the most anabolic hormone in your body, meaning it's the hormone that promotes more fuel uptake and storage than any other hormone in your body. So if the cells in your liver and muscle basically block insulin from doing its job and create this thing called insulin resistance, become resistant to insulin, then that means that when insulin is present, these cells can block more energy from coming in, right? So what happens in this insulin resistant state, just like Robby was saying, is that people eat themselves into insulin resistant by eating a high fat diet. And then the second thing they do is they try and eat something that's carbohydrate rich. Let me eat a banana. Let me eat a bowl of rice. Let me eat some raisins. Let me eat some black beans, right? When they do that, then the glucose from those carbohydrate-rich foods gets trapped inside of your blood because insulin's knocking on the door of the liver and muscle saying, hey guys, I got some glucose. You want to take it up? And those two tissues are like, remember, I'm playing this insulin resistance thing. I'm not paying attention to you. See you later. And so insulin gets trapped in your blood, and then glucose gets trapped in your blood. And as a result of that, you check your blood glucose meter an hour later and you go, I had one banana and my blood glucose is 250. That's weird. I guess bananas are bad for me.
Right.
That's the conclusion that most people bring.
Yeah. So people aren't looking at the whole picture. And when we come back from break, we're going to get into the whole picture. Dr. Greger does a great way of explaining this as well. We're going to come right back after the break. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show on WCGO. Oh, this is such good information. I just want everyone to get this. I hope everyone is sharing this out, because if you have diabetes, or if anyone you know has diabetes, not only is it reversible, but it is reversible quite simply with your diet in most cases. We're talking about type 2 here in most cases. And we're back. Hold on. Oh, it's the Elysabeth Alfano Show. I am so excited to be back. I've got Cyrus Khambatta and Robby Barbaro with me. They have written the New York Times best-selling book, Mastering Diabetes. Their website, masteringdiabetes.com, also takes you through their program for managing type 1 diabetes and for reversing type 2 diabetes. I'll just say that both of them have been living with type 1 diabetes since the early 2000s. Cyrus has an undergraduate degree in from Stanford University and a PhD in nutritional biochemistry from UC Berkeley. And Robby has been working for Forks Over Knives for quite a while. He no longer does, because he got his master's in public health. So thanks to both of you for being here, Cyrus and Robby. I'm going to do my best to really give the cliff notes of what you just said. So if I'm getting this right, it's not the carbohydrate or sugar-rich foods. It is the fatty foods that over a lifetime, several decades, even just a year or two of, let's say, trying a high protein, high fat keto diet, that your body is taking in so much fat that there's a spillover to how much fat your body can take in. So it shares it with other cells. And these cells then have so much fat that they're sort of blocking the blood sugar, the insulin that could come through the cells and be processed normally. So it isn't that there's too much insulin in the system that one might think, oh, a banana spiked my insulin or something like this. It isn't that there's too much insulin in the system. It's that the insulin isn't getting through the cells, isn't being processed correctly, because it's being blocked by too much fat and a fat-laden diet. Give or take? Do I have that right?
Yeah, you got it almost perfectly correct. There's a couple of modifications I would make to that. And the first modification is that, yes, people who consume high-fat diets over the course of time develop insulin resistance. We're talking 6 months, a year, 2 years, no question. But here's the thing. You can become insulin resistant in one meal.
Ooh.
One meal.
You mean a super fatty meal will do that to you?
100%. If you decide that you're going to eat a breakfast that contains, let's say, 2 eggs and what else? 2 eggs and a piece of fish, 2 eggs and, I don't know, a piece of chicken, something like that. And your fat intake is relatively high for that meal. Over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours, insulin will not work as effectively. Period. End of story. So it is a temporary state of insulin resistance, which you can induce very quickly. And when you're constantly eating a high-fat meal after high-fat meal after high-fat meal for breakfast and lunch and dinner and then tomorrow and the next day and the next day, then you end up developing chronic insulin resistance, which is a baseline condition which doesn't go away. The only way to reverse that is to reduce your fat intake and transition to a more plant-focused approach like Robby and I wrote about in the book. And when you do that, you can restore your insulin sensitivity very quickly.
Okay, so there's so many beautiful things about this. First of all, it's so very hopeful because you can address this without a life of pills and EpiPens, or not EpiPens, but pens, insulin pens, et cetera. And you can take control. And I think that's something that's so frustrating, particularly now when we've got coronavirus and people are getting mixed messages. If there is a director up top, we're not really sure about that, but let's just say that they're getting mixed messages from both sides of the aisle. And so it's just, it's you feel like your life is out of control, and, diet can easily spin out of control. Fat is addictive, sugar is addictive, salt's addictive. So you can get on this bad wheel very quickly. And here is a plan to get your life back into control. And this is not just your blood sugar numbers, but that means your quality of life too. So it's so very helpful. In the next segment, I want to talk about all the tips for keeping your blood sugar low. But in this segment, let's talk a little bit more about carbohydrates. They're not all the same. Fat, they're not all the same. Sugar is not all the same. Which one of you wants to take sugar? So, for example, people think bananas bad for you, too much sugar. Take it. Tell us about sugar.
Okay, here we go. The word sugar, I really don't like the word sugar because people refer to blood sugar. Sugar's in food. Carbohydrates have sugar. Sugar's going to make you fat. It's going to raise your cholesterol. It's going to make you more diabetic. And really, the one of the main problems in the rhetoric that we use as a society is that the term sugar is too vague, and it doesn't really. It has to be much more specific. Okay, so sugar, white table sugar, that is a crystal, has gone through a very intense manufacturing process. It started out as sugar cane, or it started out as sugar beets, right? Which are whole foods that were then ground and milled and cracked and dehydrated and processed and bleached and whatnot. And then you end up with a white crystalline sugar, okay? Nobody is advocating to eat more white table sugar. I don't care what dietary philosophy you follow. Nobody says eat more sugar, okay? And this is like smoking cigarettes. We know that it's not good for you. Let's not talk about it, okay? Now, the other type of carbohydrate that people label as sugar is something like a banana, or let's say fruits in general, or even potatoes. People say, I shouldn't eat potatoes because when I do, it just turns into sugar and it makes me fat, right? I shouldn't eat mangoes because mangoes equal sugar, and sugar is just going to raise my cholesterol, so I'm not going to do it, right? But the problem with that philosophy is that whole carbohydrates, whether they come from fruits, from starchy vegetables, from legumes, or from whole grains, do not metabolize to sugar in the way that most people think about it. The food that you're eating, if it's a whole carbohydrate, comes prepackaged inside of a dense three-dimensional matrix of plant material, okay? And that matrix includes vitamins, minerals, fiber, water, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. And when you are consuming carbohydrate and fat and protein interspersed amongst all of those other components, the moment it goes into your mouth and it gets into your digestive system, it takes a lot of time for your digestive system to rip apart that three-dimensional matrix and get access to the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and carbohydrate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a good thing because taking time keeps your blood glucose nice and controllable. But when you eat table sugar, you don't get any of those other protective nutrients to come along. And as a result of that, you eat table sugar and then boom, your blood glucose spikes within literally 5 to 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
So, go ahead, please.
So what we're saying here, because I want people to really be able to take this away, because I see someone else saying like, oh gosh, then I shouldn't eat bananas. No, actually, we're saying the exact opposite.
Yeah,
when you have whole foods, they come with things like fiber. We are a society obsessed with protein. We really need to get on the fiber obsession page. When it comes with something like fiber, it goes, I'm just paraphrasing what Cyrus has said, who said it so much better, obviously, but then you're giving your body something to process, and that fiber is helping you use that banana sort of like a time capsule. So it's a time release of the sugar.
That's a good way to think about it.
As well as all the other benefits of fiber, pulls the cholesterol out of your cells and roughage for your system. And it, you avoid colorectal cancer. There's a gazillion reasons that you want fiber, everybody. So we're not saying stay away from bananas. We're saying, and we're not saying stay away from carbs either. Really want to get that clear. As a keto diet might say high protein, low carbs. No, we're saying the exact opposite. You really want whole food carbs. Robby, could you give us some example of whole food carbs so that people know what we're talking about?
This is one of my favorite things in the entire world to talk about. I saw in the chat box, somebody was like, confusing for the average Joe. What do I eat? Well, that's the beauty of the Mastering Diabetes method. We've made this very simple and very easy to understand what to eat. We have green light foods, yellow light foods, and red light foods. The green light category includes carbohydrate-rich foods such as fruits. That's number 1. Number 2 is starches. So that's going to be potatoes, yams, butternut squash. Number 3 is beans, lentils, and peas. So you're going to find red lentils, brown lentils, sugar snap peas. You'll find black beans, adzuki beans, pink beans. It's a laundry list of beans. Then you go into intact whole grains. That's going to include millet, farro, quinoa, wheat, whole wheat. Those are the foods that you can eat. These are carbohydrate-rich foods, and they are all loaded with everything Cyrus just talked about: water, fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals. And when you eat those foods in their whole state, you will reverse insulin resistance as long as you are limiting the foods in the yellow light and red light categories, which are higher in fat and more processed.
Yes, so that's awesome. Thank you for that. So let's do the same with fat. Let's talk about fats, not all fats being created equal. Here we go. Slam down meat. Go ahead.
All right, let's keep this one high level, but yet informative. Okay, there's three.
Okay, you got under 2 minutes. Just FYI, take it.
Okay, basically you're telling me that I talk a lot. I understand. Okay, there's 3 types of fat. There's trans fat, there's saturated fat, and there's unsaturated fat. Okay, I just listed them in the order of how quote unquote metabolically dangerous they are. Trans fats are the worst.
Boo.
Trans fats are found mainly in packaged products that have the word partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, partially hydrogenated soybean oil, or hydrogenated canola oil, any of those, okay? The term hydrogenated is code for trans fat. So if you see that anywhere, please do not consume that product, because trans fats are known to increase your LDL cholesterol. They impair blood flow and they make your blood vessels rigid. You don't like that. It's not good. They also make you more insulin resistant. Okay, the second type of fat is called saturated fat. Now, saturated fat is what we were talking about earlier. Mainly comes from the animal world. Comes from red meat, white meat, fish, chicken, eggs. What else am I not thinking about? Cheese, dairy products in general, okay? Loaded with saturated fat. When you consume saturated fat is known to do multiple things to your body. Number one, it dramatically increases your level of insulin resistance in your liver and muscle, no question. Number two, it dramatically increases your cholesterol level. And there are plenty of studies to demonstrate this, okay? More saturated fat equals more cholesterol. More saturated fat equals more diabetes. You don't want either one of those. The third type of fat is called unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fat generally falls into one of 2 categories: omega-6 essential fatty acids. I'm sorry, omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 essential fatty acids.
Hemp seeds.
There's also a couple other omega-9s and yada, yada, yada. But the idea here is that when you hear the word unsaturated fatty acid, all I want you to think about is eating flax seeds, eating chia seeds, eating hemp seeds, okay? Eating nuts and seeds.
Nuts and seeds is what we get into when we get right back from the break. I can't wait. Stay put. Sorry. Oh, I'm so happy we're talking about hemp seeds, my omega-3s, my omega-6s. We're getting into avocados when we get back. Okay, well, this is the tip section, everybody. Here you go for your tips. Oh, we're back. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show on WCGO. My gosh, I wish I had more time with Robby Barbaro and Cyrus Khambatta. They are the authors of the New York Times Best Selling Book, Mastering Diabetes. 11% of Americans have diabetes. Most of that is type 2 diabetes. Did you know that it is indeed reversible with lifestyle changes, diet changes? You can get control of your type 2 diabetes and also manage your type 1 diabetes. It's such hopeful information. If we go long today, and for sure we will, absolutely get the Awesome Vegans podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's everywhere. So we're going to get into some details that you're not hearing on radio. So you definitely want to get the follow-up to this interview. Get it on Awesome Vegans. Okay, so we have a tip section here. And we were talking about we really want a whole food, carbohydrate rich, but whole food plant-based diet to manage your diabetes. Keep that a low fat diet as well. So that's the general understanding of what we've been talking about to master your insulin resistance. You guys give me your top 10 tips for managing your blood sugar.
Okay, so I think you're looking for tips for people who want to see excellent blood glucose control. Is that what you're saying here?
Yes.
Like, let's say you're type 2, you want to just completely get rid of diabetes. You can do that. If you're type 1, you want to have steady blood glucose control. You want to lower your A1C. We'll tell you exactly how to do that, okay?
Hit it.
Step 1, Cyrus just went over the saturated fat, okay? Number 1, you got to limit the amount of saturated fat in your diet, all right? Number 2, again, because we want to give people very detailed, actionable information, and that is why the Master Diabetes Method works so effectively, all right? Number 2, you have to be aware of the amount of unsaturated fat that you are consuming. So yes, nuts and seeds, avocados, coconut meat, olives, soy products like edamame, they're healthy, they're delicious, they're nutritious. We want them to be a part of your diet. You just have to be aware of how much you're having, because when you have too much, you're going to have a hard time losing your weight you want to lose. You're going to have a hard time controlling your blood glucose levels, and that is essential. So I will throw it to Cyrus for tip number 3.
Okay, tip number 3 is we don't want to tell you what not to eat necessarily, we want to tell you what to eat. So like Robby said earlier, okay, your best friends when living with diabetes are, number one, fresh fruit. I know it may sound weird. Why the heck would Cyrus and Robby tell you to eat fruit? Because fruit's going to cause your blood glucose to go up. The answer is fruit will only cause your blood glucose to go up if you are living in an insulin resistant state. But if you reduce insulin resistance, doing exactly what Robby was just saying, then fruit becomes available to you and you can eat it in very large quantities. Number one, so fruit is your best friend, no questions asked. The fourth tip I would give you is I want you to eat starchy vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes and butternut squash and yam and things that grow in the ground. Turnips, parsnips, rutabaga, you name it. All of that stuff that's really starchy is a phenomenal time release carbohydrate that keeps you full and helps limit blood glucose excursions. The next tip I'll give you is to consume legumes, beans, lentils, and peas, especially chickpeas, because I'm addicted to those things. Okay, beans, lentils, and peas are a phenomenal source of calories. They are also incredibly nutrient dense. They got all types of vitamins, minerals, fiber, water, antioxidants, you name it. And then the next tip I will give you before I throw it right back to Robby is whole grains. Eat a lot of whole grains. Okay, when we're talking about whole grains, we're talking about things like quinoa and brown rice and millet and farro and spelt and buckwheat. Okay, these types of grains that have not been processed significantly can really help keep your blood glucose under control. And they're also incredibly nutrient dense, and they will actually help you reverse insulin resistance like we've been talking about.
Okay. We're on to tip number 7. We got 8 tips for you. I got 2 more. Okay.
Okay.
Number 7 is simple movement. Just start to walk. If you incorporate walking into your life on a consistent basis, you will see improvements in your blood glucose control and your A1C and your energy and your weight. It's really simple. And you start increasing it as you gain confidence and you find fun activity to do. Tip number 8 is get some sleep. Finish your dinner early so you can get to bed early and try and get 8 hours a night. And that's going to help you improve your overall health, including your blood glucose control.
Can I add a tip 9 and 10, even though I'm not a mastering diabetes?
Please.
Try to eat on the earlier side. Try not to eat right before you go to bed. I can't really comment if that affects your diabetes numbers or not, but you know, it's okay. Well, then try not to give yourself lots of calories, fat, carbs, food, sugars, all these things that are great for you because you do need them to live, of course, but not right before you go to bed. And then I will say, to the extent possible, you can go to my website, ElysabethAlfano.com/recipes. I'm sure Robby and Cyrus have them as well. Try to cook your own food. The best way that you're going to have control over what you eat is if you're making it yourself. So you're not pouring in 7 tablespoons of olive oil, which I love olive oil. I'm Sicilian, but you know, you're controlling your oil. You're not overdoing it on the processed things. Lots of times I read labels. Of course, we all have to read labels. That should really be tip number 11. But I just sometimes I feel like I even wonder if they've told me everything that's in this thing. My doubt level is high. So to the extent that you can even make your own beans, I mean, you don't have to go that crazy if you don't want to. Of course, beans are in cans all over the place, but the more you are familiar with your food and where it comes from, the better it is for you. Okay, well, I have loved having you guys here, and I love these top 10 tips, and it's so helpful for everybody. I wonder if you could say, just on your way out, if there is a phrase you say to yourself to get yourself back on the wagon if you ever fall off the whole food plant-based diet scenario.
I know Cyrus's phrase. You want me to say it for you?
Oh, yeah. Say
it. This is Cyrus's, the best quote the guy's ever come up with. When in doubt, eat more mangoes.
That's exactly right.
That's why that's why your Instagram is Mango Man Nutrition, I think. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
That's so wonderful.
Absolutely addicted, not bashful.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you both for all that you do and for helping people. I want to show you again the book here on Facebook, but also for radio. Mastering Diabetes is the New York Times best-selling book by Cyrus Khambatta and Robby Barbaro. And of course, you can always go to masteringdiabetes.com. They do have a program, so it's not just the book where you're reading to educate yourself, which is of course so wonderful, but they do have a program that you can follow and you can sign up with them. Clearly, they know what they're talking about. But the most exciting thing here is that you can take control of your life and you can take control of your health. And that's really the most important thing. And it's not so hard. It doesn't mean going to the doctor and standing in line and getting an appointment and getting a prescription. It means eating the things you already love. Sweet potatoes. Come on, correct me if I'm wrong. Who doesn't love sweet potatoes? Get your hands on some sweet potatoes. Get an air fryer and get your hands on some sweet potatoes and go to town. That's all we're saying here. If for some reason this isn't enough, and this has given you so much, but there's also my class on August 8th. I hope everyone will sign up. It is at ElysabethAlfano.com/recipes, and it is Jumpstart Your Plant-Based Life. It's going to be on August 8th, and I just hope everybody will join in, and I hope that you'll also get the Mastering Diabetes book. And if you don't have diabetes, but you know someone that does, this is the gift to get for them. Robby and Cyrus, thanks so much for being with me today. I super appreciate it.
Thanks for having
us. Thank you, Elizabeth. Your energy is infectious, and I totally appreciate your ability and your desire to want to get the word out to your audience. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love you both. Everybody on WCGO, I will see you next week. Don't go away, anybody. Now, radio is over, and we get to really chat. How long did it take you to put the book together? To come, because you've both had type 1 diabetes for so long, since the early 2000s. How long did it take you to put yourselves on track?
It's a good question. Robby, how long did it take you in total to get yourself on track?
Well, I mean, I was making dietary changes for probably 4 or 5 years before I really found the correct information. And once I found the correct information, for me, it was an overnight shift. And we don't necessarily encourage people to do that. It's better to take it a little bit slower. But once I got the right information, I just flipped the switch and haven't looked back. It's been 13 years now.
13 years. Yeah, that's so wonderful. What about you, Cyrus?
So I was diagnosed at the age of 22 in 2002, and I basically I ate a low carbohydrate diet for 1 year because that's what the doctors told me to do. I felt terrible. My glucose was all over the place. I couldn't exercise the way I wanted to. It was just low energy. So at about the year marker, I switched over to a whole food plant-based diet, low in fat, and it literally felt like I got electrified. Like I stuck a wall charger. I connected myself to a wall charger, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I'm back. Right. So there was less experimentation on my end because I just happened to fall into an incredibly healthy lifestyle. But I am super grateful that, I mean, here's the last thing. Within 1 week, my blood glucose went from being out of control to like unbelievably stable. And then it got better and better and better over the course of time.
Yeah. I mean, what I always take away from these discussions is, my God, the body's incredible. You can have decades of abuse and there your body's helping you out 2-3 weeks of something, 3-4 weeks, depending on your situation. And it's back working for you. I mean, it's unbelievable. And that you don't need to look to this outside source. I mean, if there's anything I can tell people here, it's always, you must advocate for yourselves. You must go out and find that information. Don't even listen. I'm not saying don't listen to doctors, but I'm just saying they don't always have the nutritional background that you need to fix your own situation. And rather than committing yourself to a life of pills, which by the way is very expensive, if you can wrap your mind around the information yourself, you really do have the power to change the quality of your life simply by what you eat.
So true.
No questions asked.
Okay, so let's get into this a little bit because we didn't have time on the show. Keto diet versus a whole food plant-based diet. I know we did talk about why a high fat, low carbohydrate diet is so dangerous. We did talk about that, but maybe you can talk about what happens when someone follows a keto diet for a while.
Yeah. Okay. So when the reason why ketogenic diets are popular these days, whether it's an animal-based ketogenic diet or a plant-based ketogenic diet, is because there's a number of things that happen very quickly which excite people. Okay. The first thing that happens usually is weight loss. Yes, and that weight loss is something that actually is a rapid weight loss. So people who have been struggling with their weight for a long period of time adopt a ketogenic diet and they can lose, in the first 30 days, they can lose 17 pounds. And then over the first 60 days, they can lose 32 pounds, right? And it gets better and better and better over the course of time. I've read stories of people who adopted a ketogenic diet and lost 100 pounds over the course of the first 6 months.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So that's motivating. Yeah.
Very motivating. And then in addition to that, as a result of losing weight, many other biomarkers fall into place. Cholesterol goes down, blood pressure goes down, fasting insulin goes down, fasting blood glucose goes down, post-meal blood glucose goes down, energy levels go up, skin starts to clear up, you become less inflamed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So because all of these things are happening simultaneously, people easily believe that a ketogenic diet is improving their health. And the answer is, in the short term, it's improving their health because they are losing weight. That's why. However, when the weight loss slows, when the weight loss stalls, because it will at some point, that's when many things move in the opposite direction. Okay. In the short term, your LDL cholesterol goes up on a ketogenic diet, and that's not good because that predicts a future cardiac event.
Right.
But over the course of time, when your weight loss slows or stalls, that's when things start to get a little weird. That's when your A1C value is likely to start to increase. Your blood pressure starts to go back up. Your fasting insulin starts to go back up. Your fasting glucose starts to go back up. A lot of the times people say, oh my God, I got these digestive problems. I don't know what's happening, but I'm constantly bloated and I have gas and I can't digest my food properly, right? And some people end up with skin issues. Some people get like facial acne. Some people just have like incredibly low energy. And so there's all these undiagnosable conditions that come along for the ride, in addition to the diagnosable conditions. And as a result of that, there's actually plenty of research that demonstrates that in the long term, 1 to 2 years, there's absolutely nothing that a ketogenic diet can do for you that a whole food plant-based diet can't do for you. Okay. In other words, a ketogenic diet may look like a good solution, but in the short term, it looks good. In the long term, it'll increase your chronic disease risk, versus a whole food plant-based diet will decrease your chronic disease risk from day one, and it'll keep it low over the course of time.
Okay, so I just want to say here, because you've given us so much good information, but I'll break it down super cliff notes. Ketogenic diet has no fiber. You can't have a healthy diet with no fiber. It just
ketogenic diet
work.
has small amounts of fiber because they're eating non-starchy vegetables. But yeah, it's very low.
Very low because it's so fat heavy, meat centric. Heavy meat has no fiber. Meat has no fiber. And, we have these long intestinal tracts. And here you're going to put something heavy in your body that has no fiber, high in fat. That's just a recipe for long-term disaster. I want to hear from Robby a little bit about, because we didn't get to talk about it. We got to talk about exercise, which is, of course, so key to any kind of healthy diet. But what about intermittent fasting? Yes, no? How do you guys weigh in on that?
Okay. Intermittent fasting is the third component of the Mastering Diabetes method. And Cyrus is actually the intermittent fasting expert. And I'm happy that Cyrus is talking a lot today because this is fun. I was like listening to him. But in short, intermittent fasting is a simple strategy to reduce your calorie intake. It's a very simple and effective strategy. There's many different ways you can implement intermittent fasting, and it can be enjoyable. And I will say, if you include some amla green while you're doing your intermittent fasting.
What is that?
Amla green is the world's most powerful antioxidant-rich food. Amla berries, all right? There's no food on the planet. Again, Cyrus loves to talk about amla a little more than me. But there's no food on the planet that has been shown to have a more dramatic impact on cholesterol levels, blood glucose levels than amla berries. And so we took it upon ourselves to put it into a tea that actually tastes good because the berry tastes awful. So make sure to drink some amla green while you're fasting, right, Cyrus?
Yeah. Okay. So
is this something you buy, amla green? I'm a little confused. What is it exactly?
Yeah. Okay. So let me start at the beginning here. Just like Robby's saying, amla berries, amla, AMLA, is a name of a berry that grows in India. Okay. And they have used the berry in Ayurvedic medicine for centuries, and they use it for everything. You literally, if you get bitten by a snake, take some amla berries. If you have diabetes, take some amla berries. You got kidney problems, take some amla berries. You got a headache, take some amla berries, right? And so when I first read about this stuff, I was like, oh, what is this? This is all snake oil, right? Then I started reading the evidence-based research. Now, the evidence-based research is modern research that's been done over the last 5 to 10 years that's trying to understand if these berries are actually powerful. And the research is unreal. I've never seen anything like this before. Okay. The research shows that amla berries are the single most powerful cholesterol-reducing food ever discovered by humans.
Okay.
It's the single highest antioxidant content of any food ever discovered by humans. It's an extremely powerful blood glucose reducer, and it's a super powerful blood pressure reducer. Okay? Those are 4 things that dramatically improve when you consume amla berries. Here's the problem. Getting your hands on amla berries in the United States is challenging, and they taste like crap. They are very hard to consume. So there's a number of manufacturers that have taken amla berries, they import them, then they grind them up into an amla powder, and you consume it. It still doesn't taste very good. We took it upon ourselves to make this thing called amla green. And what we did is we took the amla berries and we combined them with green tea. And as a result of doing that, the flavor gets neutralized, and you have now an even more powerful antioxidant-rich food. It's a tea. You take a scoop of it, you put it into water, you start drinking it once a day. When you do that, the results that we're seeing are unbelievable. People are coming back to us saying, oh my God, my blood glucose literally dropped by 35 points in 1 week. My blood pressure is down. My cholesterol dropped by another 40 points without me doing any other changes, right? So they are a very powerful thing to integrate into your diet, and especially when you're intermittent fasting, which is what Robby was saying earlier.
Okay, so you guys sell that. Is that right? Because you mix it yourself with the tea, so it must be on masteringdiabetes.com?
So there's a different website, which is amlagreen.com, AMLA green.com. And full disclosure, I'm not trying to sell this product in any way, shape, or form right now. What I want people to understand is whether you buy amla green or something else is totally fine. Amla berries, please research them, learn about them, and try and find a way to get them into your diet, because they are incredibly powerful. And it's a medicinal plant that most people don't know anything about right now.
Okay. We all have our homework. Okay. We know what we're going to do. We got our marching orders. Amla, AMLA berries.
That's
and
right.
We're going to Google that. We're going to learn about it. I'm very interested to learn about that. There is someone who has a comment that I want to answer her. She's the Australian Health Show. For lots of plant-based recipes, certainly you can go to my website, ElysabethAlfano.com/recipes. I've got gobs and gobs and gobs of whole food plant-based recipes. I'm guessing you guys have recipes as well on masteringdiabetes.com and also in your book. Here
the book has 30 recipes, 2 21-day meal plans, and of course we have recipes on our website, on our Instagram. But honestly, the book is the best place to go. Just those are our best recipes, and the meal plan is super helpful too.
You guys, I just really want to encourage everyone to share this out, because the information is so good, and you may or may not have diabetes, but I guarantee you somebody in your circle of friends on Instagram or Facebook, they've got diabetes, and people in their family have diabetes. 11% of America has type 1 or type 1.5 or type 2 diabetes. My last exit question for the two of you guys as we go out. So we all think the world is going plant-based more and more. We heard about that from the study that just came out from the Plant-Based Foods Association as I started this show. But within the realm of health, where do you see us going? What are your predictions for the next 3 to 5 years for America?
Ooh, good question. Okay. So I'm very optimistic about the whole food plant-based movement, about the vegan movement, if you will. There's a little part of me that's slightly concerned, and the part of me that's concerned is that because a lot of people are starting to now consume Impossible burgers and Beyond Meat burgers, which are like synthetic products. Okay.
They're processed. And people can see that, right? No one thinks they're a carrot. Hopefully no one looks at them and says, oh, I had a lettuce. I mean, they're in a box. They're processed for sure.
Agreed. But I think what's going to happen, my prediction is that there's going to be a lot of people who claim that they're trying a plant-based diet because they're eating more of those types of foods. They're eating more processed vegan foods. And it's like a transition to maybe get them to a much healthier place. They're going to do that, and then they're going to find that their blood glucose is a little higher, and maybe their A1C went up and their cholesterol went up, and they say, oh, I tried the plant-based thing, it doesn't work. That's what I'm nervous about. But that's a small amount of nervousness amongst a giant universe of extremely excited that people are now paying a lot of attention to the food they're eating. And Netflix is really helping, because there's a lot of documentaries out there that are exposing the practices of the pharmaceutical industry and the practices of the agricultural industry. And people are waking up to the idea that, wait a minute, whole food plant-based diets are truly, truly powerful.
Well, of course, so what we're taking away from that is that Robby and Brian need to do a movie. Brian Wendell of Forks Over Knives needs to do a movie on mastering diabetes. I hope you guys have that in the works,
There we
Robby.
go. Let's make that happen. Let's go.
And people, happy to help with that. Robby, what do you think? What are your predictions health-wise for the next 3 to 5 years for America?
Well, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that the plant-based movement is going to continue to gain momentum. And I think that as we incorporate this into our infrastructure, that we can see big changes. So people like Rob Osfeld, who has healthy plant-based meals and Forks Over Knives all appearing in his hospital system, I think that's a game changer. So through medicine, through doctors and the hospitals, we can really turn this around and start saving money on our healthcare costs and improve our quality of life.
Yeah, I can't say that loudly enough. Again, I'm a certified instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They're all about getting plant-based options into hospitals. Yesterday, I interviewed, and I'd be happy to connect you guys, the founder of Plantable.com. I don't know if you've heard of her, Dr. Nadia Pinavaya, but she's a wonderful source for a whole food plant-based diet and helping people understand that. I think we're going to see, she was talking yesterday on this show about how insurance programs are starting to consider plant-based as something they can reimburse because it's part of staying healthy. And plant-based diet programs as something that can be reimbursed as medicine or as a prescription. So I think that's me too. I love it. When you start getting that kind of level of insurance companies involved, then you're talking about real change on a societal level. We do have a question about, well, can you say, hey, an Impossible Burger once a week, just not too much? I'm going to weigh in on that, and you guys might disagree with me here. So when I interviewed Dr. Kim Williams, who's the past president of American College of Cardiology, he's the current chief director of the cardiovascular department at Rush Medical Center. He was saying, just like Dr. Greger, these are transition foods. You absolutely don't want to stay here. Like we said, it's not a carrot. It's not a head of lettuce. We can all see that. They're in a box. They're processed food. We get it. So they're not where you want to be. But as a treat from time to time. Okay, so there's that. And then also they are a stepping stone. So they're a transition food in that they have not a lot of fiber, but at least they have a little bit of fiber. They have no cholesterol. They have no hormones. They have no antibiotics. They have no TMAO, which is trimethylene N-oxide, which is something not great for us. So they're, have a treat at your barbecue when everyone else is having meat. Have the Impossible Burger, but don't stay there. But they are better than actually meat all the time. That's where I come down on that. I don't know how you guys feel.
I fully agree with you. What I was trying to express earlier is that, if it's a transition to get you to sort of like eat a little bit less meat and animal products in general, by all means, go for it. No problem. But understand that it's a transition. And what that means is that you either eat it in a very small amount and infrequently, or it's a temporary, it's a temporary situation that eventually gets you to the next step, which is whole food plant-based.
I'm all about it.
If you can get to that whole food plant-based diet, we're eating like we're saying, trust me when I say you're going to feel and look unbelievable. And, the opportunity is yours for the taking.
Yes. Robby, final words?
I agree. It's all about your goals and your choices. Like we always say, we're not the food police at Master Diabetes. We're just here to teach you the consequences of your decisions and help you achieve your goals. And that's what we do through our coaching program. That's what we do through our virtual retreats, since we can't have in-person retreats right now. And we just provide education so you can be your best self.
Yes, I love that. You can't be your best self if you don't feel good. This is all about you feeling good. And when you feel good and you're your best self, that's when we start to see changes in the world. It really does ripple out from there. It all starts with you. MasteringDiabetes.com and the best-selling book. You guys know what to do. Robby and Cyrus, I've loved having you. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You're a true gem. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Cyrus and Robby, stay put. Everybody else, I will see you tomorrow for the Plant-Based Business Hour. Same place, same time. Love you, everybody. Thank you for being vegan.